That's better. Is that better? Oh, yeah, that's better. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for attending our Infrastructure Committee meeting on the 8th of February 2022, which is our first for our new council. This meeting will be audio recorded, and those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without the prior authorisation of the committee. Applications for attending a meeting via video link. Are there any? Nil, thank you. Any apologies? Nil, thank you. Declarations of interest? None received yet. Public participation? Nil.
None registered.
None registered. Okay. All right. So if we like to move down to the business items, which is on page 1, ISC 2.1, Review of Infrastructure Service Committee Charter. Just to start off, I would like to move with a slight change of time. The charter from 1 to 12:30 p.m. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion or regarding the change of time and the adoption of the charter? If there being no discussion, then all those in favour of the recommendation that the adopt the revised Infrastructure Services Charter with a slight change of time to 12:30 p.m. All those in favour, raise your hand. Please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Thank you. If you'd like to turn over to page 7, please. ISC 2.2, the Works Program, Infrastructure Services, Water and Sewer. And I've just been told that we have a new Water and Sewer Director? Manager. Well, that's even better. Greg Longman. Greg, welcome to our infrastructure and our council, and we look forward to working with you, and it's just great to have you here. So thank you for coming. Okay, who's going to do that? Karen or Nicolisha?
We'll let Nalakshi do that. And on that note, I would like to thank Nalakshi for all her hard work over previous months, probably close to a year or longer, in acting in that manager's role now that Greg's here. So thank you for that, Nalakshi, and I'll let you carry away with the report.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Through chair, yeah, just do the water and sewer update for January. Just the KPIs summary. Water services, there was no water quality complaints for January and only one sewer service complaint. Just the recycled water effluent usage, there's a improvement compared to December, but still under the target levels because due to ongoing wet weather, there is less demand for recycled water from Scone STP. Then I just moved to key activities. Maryverse STP license non-conformances. We had a meeting with EPA in October last year, and just EPA requested council to submit a plan to attack the problem. Just the deadline was 31st January. We just sent our plan, replied on 18th January, and at the moment we are waiting to receive the comments from EPA. And cashless storage scheme, last year, October, council resolved to hold the project at the moment after completion the detailed design until we get further funding. After that decision, another activity happened. We just sat with Department of Primary Industry and Cardno, who was the consultant for detailed design, to review the final design they did in order to find other options if there is a way to reduce the cost. We had that meeting in December. Then sewer relining program is in progress. The contract is Aberdeen. They started relining job 31st January in Aberdeen and just in progress, continue for the rest of the financial year. Similar to that, water main renewal tender is awarded to H.L. Mullane and Sons. They completed the Miranda Little Street water main replacement job in December. At the moment, Hill Street, Liverpool Street upgrades, water main upgrades in Scone, and St. Andrew Street, Aberdeen is in progress. The next item, water level. Level 1 water restrictions will remain in place as resolved in council meeting January, and in line with drought management and emergency response plan, the upgrade just in progress at the moment, and as planned, they will finish the report by March, and we plan to get the proposal to April council meeting. Yeah, that's pretty much it from the key activity side. And if you have any questions, just.
Any questions or comments?
Yes.
Right, thank you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank
Thank
you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. What are we doing for the people in Cassis at the moment with relation to the sewerage, to their sewerage?
Yeah, what was the outcome of that meeting that you had?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take that. So we have asked for the redesign. At this point in time, there is nothing right now that we can do. However, we're exploring a number of options. One of those options was asking for efficiencies in the design. Through GHD doing that, we're looking at a reduction of that of over potentially $1 million in the cost. The other option that the General Manager asked us to look at was the potential as a short-term, not long-term fix, to bring in trucks to empty out each of the tanks, etc., on a regular basis. So right now, we're still looking at that design and looking for cost efficiencies. We also met with the funding body to discuss the funding and to look to see if there's any other opportunities for funding in that area as well. Right now, there isn't any, but that doesn't mean we've stopped looking. It just means that none have come to the market right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So how are the people in Cassis managing at the moment? Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the people in Cassis still have sewerage and still are able to use the facilities, etc. The issue is that there's saturation around the private sewerage tanks, and that's how this all came about. So we're looking for a solution to that, but I think it's important to recognise that as professionals, we need to ensure that we have a suitable, cost-effective, long-term solution, and not a solution that's short-term or that doesn't meet the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Yes, just further to that, perhaps I'll direct this question to the General Manager. Well, the last reading, I think Cardno has cost the council just under $500,000. I'm just wondering on what basis that they could do that, going back and revising things, was there a clause in the original contract?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. So with any contract, we lay out the scope to begin with, and the only way there can be a change to the scope is through a variation in writing from the contractor that was successful to us as the client. So we haven't actually changed the scope as yet. What we've done is we've asked them to have a look for efficiencies. They've given us some suggestions around the design and how we can refine it in order to reduce the cost. And then we've taken that to Hunter H2O and we've asked them if they agree with the efficiencies that the designer are recommending. So at this point in time, we haven't asked them to change the design. We've just asked them for recommendations on how we can reduce the cost.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking that did they vary from the original scope that was asked about? Because, you know, $500,000 out of $1.2 million is half it gone before we've even got going. And I'm just wondering whether Cardno could be held accountable in that way. Is that yeah?
No. To answer your question clearly and succinctly, no. I would have to go and look at the original scope and look at all the variations, if any, that have been done. I don't have that information in front of me right now. As a more long-term solution, which is what we're all about, I actually want to delve into the previous cost forecasts made by other organisations, and then juxtapose that with the actual tender that we received, and then the actual final construction cost or the final design cost. The reason we want to do that, and the reason the general manager of that has asked me to do that, is so that we can see if there's any patterns, and also see if we're getting value for money and prevent this happening in future. So unfortunately right now, not just with sewer and water infrastructure, but also across bridges, roads, etc., we're finding that there is a steep increase in the costs that we had predicted. Now, we have a number of engineers and project managers at council that are extremely experienced in this area. We also engage consultants, etc., to help us because they are experts in these areas. And what we're finding is there's a number of reasons why this is happening. And that includes the fact that the federal government, for example, put out a grant for bridges, and they put it out to absolutely all the councils in New South Wales. And they didn't put a time, or they put a time limit on that, meaning that the small number of bridge contractors that are here in New South Wales were in massive demand, and that allowed them to put their prices, as well as the price of materials due to COVID, up by 30% or more. So there's a number of factors, but in relation to sewerage and to the CAS lists and to that design, etc., I still want to understand personally what the recommendations were, for example, from Hunter H2O, and I wanted to understand what the tender price was and then what the final design price was. So we're doing an analysis to make sure that we understand that and to, plan accordingly.
With the has a cost benefit been to pumping of, in other words, the cost of pumping out the sewages, etc., is a short-term solution. However, how long will that have to go, and how much will that actually cost? Because that's all coming out of the, is it correct, coming out of that original grant, or is it coming out of some other fund? Because otherwise we will just be virtually using up more of our funds in just the design and continual revision, and also a short-term solution. Can you give me any advice on that, please?
The advice I can give you is each and every grant that we apply for, we must stipulate exactly what the scope of that grant is for. For any change to that grant, we've got to submit a variation request to the funding body. So at this point in time, we're nowhere near that. We've done some very, very, very rough cost estimates in terms of pumping out the tanks. But at this point in time, we haven't had a conversation with the grant body. I can see the general manager wants to jump in here.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chair, any grant funding we get will be for construction of the sewage scheme. Right. Any short-term process to allow the community to continue on while we're waiting for that grant funding and the construction of that scheme will be funded by the community. So if, for example, we went to a septic tank pump out system and transported that to Merriwell Sewage Treatment Plant, which is one of the options we're looking at as a short term, that would need to be funded through a levy to the community.
Okay. Look, the second question that I have too is the sewerage at Merriwell, and also that there was discussion, I think, regarding getting an easement through the area adjoining the sewerage. I understand that it is a possibility that some of that land may be coming up for sale. Would council be interested in purchasing that land or a part thereof? And is that the solution to our problem at Merriwell?
Mr. Chair, there's a number of performance issues with the plant that have been outlined in the report. Yep. A lot of that relates to the performance of the sewage treatment plant and the sludge lagoons in particular. Whilst an easement is required, we do not require the entire site. Now, there may be negotiations that can be had during the sale of the land to ensure that we have access to a portion of that land, either through an easement or a direct purchase if that's required, but we probably don't need access to the entire parcel of land. So that will all be investigated as part of this discussion with the EPA. There's quite a considerable cost associated with desludging and the land acquisition, and the EPA understands that. So they're not expecting an immediate answer that will address it immediately, but they do want to see council enter into an agreement or a plan to address these issues ongoing.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? If there isn't, then I'll put the resolution that the committee receive the report and note the information. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I can move it.
Seconder, please.
I second it.
Taya, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Raise your hand. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Thank you. I'd like to turn over to page 11 now. Works Program Infrastructure Services. Karen Davies and Sam Wooden. The committee received the report and note the information. Who's going to take it, Sam or Karen? Sam. Good on you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, basically this is report is to outline our maintenance activities over the last month and into next month. There's a list of KPIs there. I'm not going to go through them all individually. So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Addition to that, we've got our maintenance grading program and our resheeting program attached as well. Note that our maintenance grading program has fallen behind for a number of reasons, but mainly due to the storm damage in the November, December rain events. So whilst we're trying to get on top of that, and yeah, we're trying to get on top of that and trying to catch up our maintenance grading program as well by using local contractors. But if you've got any questions on the KPIs or the maintenance program or the resheeting program, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes,
Through you,
Councillor Abbott.
Chair. I just want to know what the status is of the playground under the bypass, because I believe that was damaged by floods. Some of the community have told me. How is that going?
Through you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. There is no playground under the bypass. There was car parking area. And unfortunately, due to the floods, there was significant damage to the bitumen there. It actually crumpled up and was unusable. There was large holes there. The team have gone in and done some remedial works to make it safe and to make it usable at present. It's been like that for a while now. They've removed the bitumen and it is just compressed dirt there now.
Sorry, did you say there wasn't a playground? Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. There isn't a playground?
You're talking about the part under the bypass in Scone next to the Bill Rose complex?
Yes, and there is a little playground there as well.
There's a
isn't there?
playground in the Bill Rose complex. I can let Sam talk more about that.
Yeah, and how is that going?
Sam?
So through the chair, my understanding is that we lost quite a bit of Berkshire softball there, but that's been replenished. So other than that, I'm not aware of any issues with the playground.
Thank you. It's just some of the community had said that had been quite damaged. So that's through you, Mr. Chair, that's functioning now as a playground?
It's been functioning for some time. I have my daily walk down there at about 6 a.m. if anyone wants to join me.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, we can go tomorrow if you want.
Yeah, well, I'd like to, but probably not. Did you say 6 a.m.?
6 a.m.
Yes, probably not 6 a.m. at the
Oh,
moment,
okay.
but maybe later I would like to do that, because I have some suggestions as well, because I've had quite a few comments through you, Mr. Chair, that it should be fenced, because some parents with more than one child find it quite tricky when they're dealing with an infant and they've got a toddler escaping.
Yes.
So I'd love to do, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd love to do a site inspection of the playground.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a perfect time to do it. We're actually doing the community strategic plan consultation and we're looking at the Depop as well. Would welcome submissions from yourself, other councillors and all members of the community around any future projects that they believe would be suitable. Don't forget, it's not just for the coming year, it's for future years as well. So happy to do that. I do go away after my walk tomorrow for a conference. However, I am available next week and that goes for anyone here that would like to have a walk. Maybe we can get a group of us and go and have a look.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Thank you. And have one more question about the footpaths and cycleways. And this is with respect to Moobie Road. I no longer live at Moobie Road, on Moobie Road, but I have noticed prior to leaving that quite a few cars park on the cycleway. And I wonder, through you, Mr. Chair, what we could do about that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, which cycleway?
Yeah,
Sorry?
which one? Which
The
one?
Moobie Road cycleway.
I could see Sam eager to answer this question.
Sorry?
Sam Wooden's just going to answer this question.
Through the chair, I'll have to have a look into that to see what we can actually do, because it's quite a long stretch of footpath there, and I don't believe we want to be putting signs up all the way along there. But however, I will investigate and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Do we have, yes,
through the chair, I'd just like to say, I'm down at Bill Rose Complex daily, or not, if not twice a day. And I just wanted to say that I think after the floods, your team just did an amazing job getting things back on track as quickly as they did. And the playground, actually, Councillor Abbott, is being used because I think you guys got that sorted. So thanks for that, because I think that's just been a great initiative from the council.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much, Councillor McPhee. Really appreciate the positive feedback. I'm sure you can see there was mention about the schedules that are always published in this monthly, the grading schedule and resheeting schedules. Obviously, best laid plans and all that, but the flood works and certain works and safety works need to come as a priority. So we're doing our best to get there, and we understand there's still work to be done. Just want to make sure the community know that we're not resting on our laurels and that we're doing the best we can.
okay, thank you. Yeah, look, I think I also like to say 1955 flood. I was only a little boy then, but for those, it was recorded as really very, very high. We had water levels. I'm not sure about Scone, but very close to those water levels. And to clear away the debris and things like that is a mammoth job. And of course, replace it. I think that council has tried very hard, maybe perhaps failed in some ways, but I think the council has tried to correct and modify those problems. So, are there any further questions or comments on the works program, infrastructure services? If there isn't, then I'll ask for a move and a seconder, please.
I move it.
Taya, thank you. Seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor McPhee. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Thank you. Let's turn over to page 26. ISC 2.4, Strategic and Capital Works Update. Karen, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I won't read to you what's on the page. You can already see there. We have reduced the overall capital works expenditure. Now, don't forget, this is a month ahead of itself. So when it says expenditure for December 2021, that is correct. Some people did ask me if it was going to be for January. It is not. And as you can see, in terms of our revised budget, thanks to various issues with COVID and floods, etc., you can see that we're at 87%, which is good for the revised budget. And it's something to consider going forward. So don't forget, we have got the Depop coming up. I know I keep harping on about it, but that includes some important stuff, and we're setting budgets, etc. So please bear that in mind when we're looking to set capital works and that. Now, if everybody turns over to page 32, you will see that that is the start of the actual detailed update there.
That's for all the older people. That's for all the older people to read. Thank you so much for consideration.
So for those that are new here, it's very self-explanatory, but what you're looking for is the green is always good, the amber is something to be aware of, and the red is something that we're obviously taking action on. And this tells you all the, or most of the projects that we're working on, where the funding's coming from, the original completion date, and then as things happen with various issues, we then have a revised or an estimated completion date. And we also explain what the cost is to date. Now, the important parts of this, aside from the actual traffic light system, is the far right-hand column. And that right-hand column, the two right-hand columns, in fact, they give you schedule status and the activities for the next 3 months. So anytime the constituents have questions for you, I would highly, highly recommend having a look at this sheet first to see if the project's on there. And then you can give them an update or a forecast on what's due to happen. So over to you, Mr. Chair, or anyone else in the room that would like to ask any questions.
Could I ask a question on point 8, please?
Of course.
The Merriward Drive Reviver. I noticed that the old toilets were demolished, which was very pleasing to see. But also the old building that was there. There are a number of people, I understand there's at least 2 of local people that want to, or committees that want to use that. Where are we up to with that? How do
You
we
are
go about
correct.
that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you are very correct. We're, I believe, doing a tender process for that. Am I on the right track?
Okay,
So you're right, we did have more than one group that would like to use that building.
yeah, well, I just heard, well, this is not, this is sort of perhaps street talk, but I'm not sure, but I'm just wondering how it can be properly, shall we say, disposed of or moved. My understanding is it's a portable building that can be shifted. I think that there was the Green Thumbs, I think, that were wanting to shift that. So how do we go about it? Are you got that in hand so that it can be advertised, that a tender process take place? I'm happy whichever way, as long as we move on.
Yeah, through the chair, that will be the process. We'll advertise and tender
Right.
it out. Yeah, for that reason, there is multiple groups that are interested in it, and I think that's probably the fairest way to do it.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're done on that page. We'll go over to page 16.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
that's fine. Just on that point 2.8, decommissioning of the old site, has that's, it says the end of January, but is that just the scope for the next 3 months or?
Apologies for that. That was oh, Sam.
Yeah, no, so we, through the chair, we're all up there. So basically, as the chair said, the 12 block has been removed. We've just got to top dress that, and then the amenities block, or not the amenities block, the shelter or the
remaining building.
Yeah,
The remaining building.
remaining building.
Yeah.
The shelter will stay there and the
Yeah.
tables, but it's the actual little well, I call it the portable
Yeah.
removable kitchen and serving area. That's what we're talking about. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's turn the page 16 to 26, please. I might add point 17. I've been past the council, the Casslis Middletown revitalisation, and I noticed the old toilets have been removed, which is very pleasing to see, and the new ones are there, and also the children's playground. I've spoken to a number of people there, especially on Australia Day, and they were very happy with the result. So full marks to Sam and those who were involved in that and getting that to happen. So thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, while we're on the topic of Casslis, there is actually a community meeting there on Wednesday, the 16th of February at 6 p.m. in the hall. All the councillors should be aware of that. They were provided with an email, but for anyone that's watching this live or watching the recording, please do come along if you're a Casslis community member.
When's that? It's next week. Thank you. Okay. Anything
Yes. Mr.
further?
Chair, yes,
Thank you,
on
Ken.
26, does the error in pier headstock castings, what is that?
I'll let Graham answer that. Graham will just make his way to the microphone.
Sorry, through the chair. There was an error in the drawings for Cameron's Bridge between the headstocks and the bridge piles. It was a contractor error, and as such, they have gone away to resolve that. They have a solution and have people on site correcting that process, and that will probably cause a 2-week delay in the delivery, but they're trying to make that up through other means. So that's what that's about.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's at their cost then, the contractors?
Absolutely. There's no cost to council for that process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to be clear in terms of projects, whenever we do, we are notified of a delay. Our preference is in the first instance for the contractor or the team to look at opportunities to make that up, whether it be by additional resources or working on weekends, etc., etc. Outside of that, then we look at how it's going to affect the schedule going forward. And the other thing is, if there obviously is any costs and they are borne by the contractor for any mistakes on their part, then that's how it is. And all project managers at council work to that rule.
Thank you. Line item 25, the septic tanks for the Merriwell Racecourse. Tanks are ordered, plumbing to be hooked up, a septic tank system to by the end, awning to be erected by the end of January. Sam, how are we going with that? I think they were wanting, the Merriwell Race Club are wanting to hold their races this year, which is usually, I think, in April.
Through the
How are we
chair.
going with that?
Yeah, it's 25th of April, I think, Anzac Day, they have their race. But we're on track to be finished by the end of the month.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good upgrade, a very good upgrade, very much appreciated too. Okay, no further comments? We'd like to turn over to line item reference 27 to 32.
Through you, Mr. Chair. 27. 27.
Yes.
The original target completion date of Moonambrook Road was April 22. Now they're talking June 24. Sometime or other want a full update on this project. We work hard with our politicians to get these projects and get funding. Why we're so far behind? It says they're 5 months behind with the design work. Next thing, we'll be calling back to the politicians and asking for a request of extension on time. I get sick of talking to politicians about it. So at some stage, can I have a full update on that road project, including a little bit more time frame, sourcing of gravel, etc. You know my feelings on bringing gravel from the other side of Murrundi to Moonambrook. If it has to be done, it has to be done. But I'd like some concrete responses to it. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for that pun. We will get you some concrete responses, Councillor Collison. We would be happy to prepare a written report to this committee for next month. Would that suit your request?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, we've got land acquisitions and everything. I mean, not one landholder up there that I know of has had any talk with council whatsoever. The final designs are nearly completed. You would think there'd be correspondence with landowners.
So to my question, Councillor Collison, would you be happy to receive a report to this committee?
Yes, ASAP. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair, will that report be available to all councillors because I'm not on this committee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that report will form part of the agenda items, and providing there's no confidential information in there, I'm more than happy for it to be available to all.
Just on this line item 32, project value 2.690. I thought it's been reduced down to that price because it was a lot higher than that before. That's the original cost or the original money that we were allocated. And where's it up to now?
So if you read, Mr. Chair, the estimate there, final design revised cost estimate by Cardno is 5.6 million. As the directors pointed out, that's not acceptable because the community can't afford that. So that's going to be revised by the designers. And if we can find efficiencies or reduction in scope, we will.
Okay. We can, and could we expect a report from that very soon?
We can probably look at maybe, would we have one next month, Karen, or would it be the month after?
It would be the month after.
Yep, okay.
Okay. As soon as we can. It's, yes, it's an embarrassment. Okay, turn over to page 33 to 39. Do we have any questions or comments on those pages? Per the line item 39, the Movie High Reservoir Pressure Zone, where are we up to really? That we're still designing and developing it, or what?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as you can see from the schedule status, concepts were received and further consultation is planned as the next step. So the next portion of this is to consult, and then the project manager will develop the project brief based on the feedback from the consultation.
Okay. All right, we'd like to turn over to page to line items 40 to 43. It's all pretty, we have any questions or comments on that? If not, we can look at the grading program on 1 of 5. I just have a question on Settlement Lane, Rural 1. Were any signs put up on that road that it was a dry weather road only? Because it's just down black soil, and any idiot drives down there when it's wet, just causes a furrow so that the water can run down.
Sorry,
I know one of the neighbours has been very concerned regarding that, and also the fact that when they graded, he was happy to take the water because the road reserve is so narrow. He was happy to take the water into his contour bank, which is then dispersed correctly, and it goes back into the Bow Creek. Do we know anything more about that? Sam, could you update?
Through the chair, no, I'll have to investigate. to
If
find
we
out.
can't, yes, the signs need to be, otherwise close the road. Yeah. Okay. And also I did notice the Avocado Road, I think has the bad washouts in the centre. Has anybody, Sam, have you been able to look at that? Because I think the grading was another 12 months off.
Through the chair, I personally haven't had a look at it yet.
About 3 k's up.
Sorry?
It's about 3 k's up the road.
Okay, so I'll have one of my staff members investigate. However, if it's due to flood damage, like we're trying to work through all those issues.
Yeah, look, I accept that too. The issue is really that the gutters weren't cleaned out on the side, because that road before that rain was graded and was in good condition. And of course, the table drains weren't cleaned out, and so it just came straight down across the road. And that's really, an operational matter. Okay, we're still looking through. I'm up to page 4 of 5, but is other people caught up with me or ahead of me? Five of 5, yeah. The last page is 1 of 1, and it's the Shire Council resheeting program. Sam, can you give us an update on that, or Karen? I don't mind.
Mr. Chair, we've just adopted that.
Yep.
In the last report. So that's an attachment to the report
Okay.
prior to this one. But obviously, if questions need to be asked, we can ask that. But that's actually an attachment to the prior report.
Yeah, okay. All right. We have no further comments or questions on the IC 2.4. No, hang on. Which one do we have?
2.4.
2.4. Move. Councillor Collison, seconded.
A second.
Councillor McPhee. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, I think the ayes have it. I'd like to turn over to page. What are we up to now? Is it 43? 37. 37, okay. MR 358 Willow Tree Road upgrade. Gavin, don't go away. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks. Through the chair, so far up to date, we've completed works on site, which is the remedial earthworks, where we removed approximately 45,000 cubic metres from site. from December to February. We've also had over 30 vehicles enter the site, either illegally or by accident. And as reported, a large portion of the plant that were on site were also damaged as well, which obviously had some delays in our work as well. With GHD, the 75% design is due this week, which is a delay from what's in the report, as we're waiting on some geotechnical data. The 100% is due for mid-March, and the final environmental assessment is starting tomorrow, and that includes the works for the slip material into the gully. Other than that, the site will remain closed with weekly inspections regarding access and movements, and the tender documents are also being prepared. But it should also be noted that to go to tender, you will need funding. I suppose, is there any questions?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, when can we expect the road to be open?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from the actual issuing of the contract, it could be up to 2 years.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, how are we going to manage for the next 2 years with that road closed? How will the community manage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only option is to continue to use the drive around. Unfortunately, there is no viable option to keep the site open. If we did look at attempting to keep the site open in any way, A, it would be extremely unsafe for all involved, including workers, staff and the public, and B, it would increase the cost by a huge amount, and it is already a costly project.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, have we done a media release on the fact that we're looking at 2 years now for the road before it can be reopened? Does the community know that?
I think that we were all sent out a timeline on that, Mr. GM. I think could you comment on that?
We had a community meeting at Marywall last Wednesday, well, it's Thursday night. We spoke to the community about the timeframe and expected timeframe and the cost, and I did a number of radio interviews as a result of that as well. So in the last week and a half, we've done both face-to-face communication and radio communication. So yeah, that message is getting out there. We'll continue to do that. As Gavin said, we haven't gone out to tender yet. As part of the tender submission, they will need to submit a schedule of works. That will give us an estimate of their works program. And obviously there'll be some allowance in that for bad weather and delays, but it'll give us a better idea rather than just this arbitrary 2 years. It'll give us a better idea of what the actual time will be.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, as we went to the community meeting at Marywall the other day, I think the residents out there have accepted what we're saying, and the meetings are getting pretty happy and confident what's happening. I don't know about they're over happy, but that's what they've got to accept. But remember, I did say out there that once we're getting very close to this, it's our job then, and the GMs and mine, to go and see their local members, which we've already got that in ball rolling. It's not guaranteed we're going to get the funding. But as soon as we get some evidence we can really go to Sydney or meet our police up here, we will be. And they certainly know where we stand, Mr. GM, and I'm pretty sure they're leaning towards us.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Look, it's most unsatisfactory, the whole thing. Everybody understands that, I think. If they don't understand it, they never will. And many of the people down there are inconvenienced. We accept that. Our enterprise is inconvenienced in the same way as everyone else. But I think we have to be careful not to be trying to put timelines on and saying it's going to be open in 12 months or 2 years. It just can't happen. And once these things, won't believe that the GM has just said, once the tender, the design, and then tenders go out and come back, then you can start to say, well, this is what the contractors say it's going to cost, and it's going to take that length of time. We then have more certainty, and I think that's where we've got to be. We've got to be very careful, including myself, because we're impacted too. And so anyway, I think that's where it is, and if we can do that, once we get that road funded and designed, tendered, and then get the funding for it, then we're almost there. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, also, is there any further information on the investigation that's being conducted?
Not since you asked last time, councillor. We received, I think the last update I gave you was when the actual representative from Office of Local Government zoomed in and spoke to councillors direct. You may recall that his advice then was it was low on their priority list. They had other pressing investigations to do at other councils. With COVID, they'd been struck with some staffing shortages as well, so it was fairly low on their list. There's been very little further movement since that time. And we're just in their hands. There's nothing we can do about that. We're just waiting for them to activate it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did have a further request from the OLG for some more information. That only came through recently. So we're working with them on that. They have had a change in staff, and therefore it would seem that they require a little bit more information from us.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So that request came through since the meeting with the ORG representative?
That came through literally the end of January.
Thank you.
I think there was from an observation that I had out there and speaking with them, there seems to be, there are some people who believe that they want to pin the blame on particular people and etc. But look, I think we as a council have got to remember that we're a council. We've got to get the thing done. We're just going to spend our time and our resources trying to blame somebody. It's happened. We all know that. We all have ideas of how it happened, why it didn't happen, but that's not fixing the road. And it's fixing the road that I personally am certainly going forward on and very strong on the fact we've got to get it done. So anyway, anything further? Questions or comments on ISC 2.5? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I move it.
I second.
Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. I'd like now to turn to page 43. That the committee received the report and note the information on answer to councillors' questions. Is everyone happy with the answers to their questions? I asked questions. I'm happy with the answers. Councillor Abbott, are you happy with the answers?
No, not entirely, and I have further questions to ask. Thank you.
No, well, we're just dealing with this one at this stage.
Yes, so
And then
no,
we're
I'm
open
not
to,
happy.
You're not happy. Well, I think that we are asked to, the recommendation, the committee received the report and note the information. I think that's what we're voting on. So I'll put that then.
Moved.
Who'll move that?
Moved.
Councillor
Second.
McPhee. Those in favour, please say aye. As against, I think the ayes have it. We now turn over to councillor questions. So any questions from the floor, from the councillors? Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 5 questions. My first question is in relation to Mr. Michael Reid from Murrurundi and electric vehicles. And I asked this question at the Environmental and Community Services Committee this morning, and the director, Mr. Pringle, said that this was an infrastructure matter. So I'm now here asking this, that there's a level of frustration experienced by Mr. Reid.
I didn't do this.
Pardon?
I'm sorry. It wasn't in relation to your question.
Okay, thank you.
No, there was nothing to do with that. I
Okay.
apologise.
So, so Mr. Reid has been in touch with me, and he basically said the council proceeded so far with the EV stations, and that there had been certain undertakings made from council's end that had then been suddenly finished, and he wants to know where we're going to go with this, and also raises the point that we ourselves have made an undertaking in our climate action strategy that we want to see more electric vehicles in the Shire. So what will happen? Now, I did point out to Mr. Pringle this morning that communication had been made with Mr. Reid from Mr. Jakes, who is from the Environmental and Community Services under that portfolio. But if this is an infrastructure matter, what can we please help Mr. Reid? Can we please get in touch with him and start the conversation again? Because obviously having electric vehicle stations in Murrurundi is a very good idea. And it's a shame that we've undertaken to do something and suddenly we've stopped that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify the question, it's on behalf of Michael Reid from Murrurundi, and the question is around electric vehicles, but what is the actual question?
So
Just
the
in a
actual
nutshell.
question is, he had been in touch with council putting these electric vehicle stations, and I believe from my understanding is that they were on the roadside. So council was doing investigations as to what should happen, and then that stopped. So it's up in the air, and he is disappointed and would like communication with council.
So that, just Mr. Chair, for clarification, as you know, the question was already raised in the Environmental and Community Services Committee this morning. Mr. Pringle's taken on notice. We'll provide a response, but it is a cross-department issue because it involves both the development and the use of a road as part of that development. So both the infrastructure team and the sustainability team are working on that, and we'll provide a response.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my next question is on signs. And I've been asked by by Linda Poser from the Garden Centre from Plants on Main, how does the community go about requiring or acquiring, I should say, direction signs for their businesses? So she has wondered how she would quite like to have signs pointing to her garden centre and the cafe. And she would like to know how she does it. She obviously understands if there's payment involved, she has to pay that. But she wasn't, how would she go about that? So whether we could get in touch or...
Through the chair, it's a simple application. We have got, it is in our fees and charges. So yes, she just applies for a facility sign.
Thank you.
And she can just,
Thank you. And then question 3 is at the Scone Neighbourhood Resource Centre, that big area there is some rubble and some others and some significant weeds. I was just wondering, again, this has come from Linda Poser, who's also part of Tidy Towns, who are looking at maybe doing some tidying up there, but they're impeded at the moment by the rubble and the big weeds. So they were wondering if council might be able to provide assistance to make that area a little bit more manageable before they start.
Sorry, Councillor, was that at the airport, did you say?
No, at the Scone Neighbourhood Resource
Oh,
Centre.
Resource Centre,
Yes.
okay.
So
We'll take that on notice and we'll
Lovely.
investigate that, thank you.
thank you. And then Murrurundi and the swinging bridge. I just would like to know, I know we've all been sent questions and a significantly detailed email. Has council made a final decision that in light of recent queries and information as to what we're going to do next? And when will council organise the Murrurundi meeting with the interested stakeholders?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of misinformation out there right now, a lot of, unfortunately, misinformed members of the public that are under the impression that there'll be a high-level bridge that will impact or block the footway in some way. That is completely incorrect and not accurate at all. To counter that, not only did we have a community meeting before Christmas, whereby we did agree to have community consultation on this topic yet again, but I've been in contact with members of the community and we've agreed to do the consultation in March to give ourselves time to advertise it and to encourage all members of the community to come. I've requested that they provide me with a recommended date, time and location so that as many people from the community can come as possible. And the other side of that as well is we'd really like to give people that aren't able to attend the opportunity to put forward their thoughts on it. So to that end, we would like to provide them with a visual mock-up of what the proposed structure will look like. And that's to help dispel any misunderstanding or misinformation that's out there. So we'll be doing that in March to answer your question.
Thank you. And just with respect to the misunderstanding, my understanding is that any form of bridge, whether it's low or high, will impact the heritage value of the swinging bridge. So this is, and also I understand that we were under the, through you, Mr. Chair, we were under the impression that if we change, we couldn't change we couldn't vary the original concept. And And I understand that that's not the case, that we can go for the causeway, we can actually
So
do the upgraded causeway.
through you, Mr. Chair, there's no requirement to change the causeway. The funding deeds itself is for a low-level bridge. The whole point of the low-level bridge, I'm not an expert on heritage, so I can't talk to that, but I did read the report, is that the low-level bridge will not impact the footbridge in any way, shape or form. That is the theory, and I'm happy for that to be put forward in an impression of what the bridge will look like. The other thing is, with the funding deed, we're able to request a variation, but that is not guaranteed. And my question to you as an engineer myself is, why would we replace the causeway with another causeway? We may as well actually give the money back and not do that, or we can build the low-level bridge, which will allow better passage for fish, etc. And it will also allow the bridge or that actual access to be open when the rains come. Not all of the time, there will be times when it's closed, but the idea being is that it actually helps the community a bit better without damaging the view of the footbridge or the heritage status of the footbridge. They're two unrelated structures.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, as we know, the community is very unsettled and the heritage impact has been listed, and the low bridge would definitely have an impact, Mr. Chair, if there were a low bridge. And given that the Maralla Causeway has been there for a while, I think originally the fish concept was actually mooted to be a SOP for me, that the fish would be able to travel very well with a bridge, but they can travel well with a causeway. And my concern, and this has come from the community as well, is that a bridge can be washed away.
Thank you, but look, we need to leave it as a question rather
Thank you.
than a commentary. No, I appreciate your thoughts, but I think we need to leave it as a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you that there will be a meeting in Murrurundi. This is a very live issue and it's causing a lot of distress.
I understand that, Councillor, but thank you for your question. Always happy to.
That's all
Those
are all my questions.
Okay. Any further questions?
I've just got a comment, Mr. Chair. CRMs, I've mentioned a couple of new councillors. I really push the people with a CRM to actually put it in writing, put a CRM in. This is only me, but I have mentioned to a couple of councillors, the best way I believe is get that person to put a CRM in, or you put it in for them on their behalf, because remember, they get immediate response through their SMS to say they've received it. And I just think it's a good paper trail. It's up to individual councillors, but that's the way I do it. I put it in for them, or they put it in, or they send me an email with it, then I forward it to the directors. That's only my thought.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's an excellent point, Lord Mayor. There is various opportunities for anyone to put in a CRM. They can do it through the website, they can do it on the phone, they can come to the counter, they can send an email to council@upperhunter. So there's lots of opportunities, and you're right. If they provide us with their email address or their mobile phone number, they can indeed receive confirmation with their CRM number in there, and that will act as a reference point. So if they need to contact council again or contact a councillor, they can provide that reference number and we can add notes to that, and we'll keep that same CRM open so that we can update it.
So yeah, Mr. Chair, just it clears it up, because I had several people early in my council career that the time they told me the story and then I brought the story to someone and you took the story, it always wasn't quite correct. But if they put it in or you put it in for them, I think it's a great idea.
I'd agree with that through you, Mr. Chair. And it's actually a really good opportunity for members of the public to consult with council staff, and actually we can understand better what they require and what they want. So please do encourage members of the public to do that. And if you want to provide us with the CRM, that's great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPhee.
Through the chair, I think also if more people do it, you can actually see how many people are concerned on the one issue. So you get names and there may be a group of 10 or 20, and then you know it's a real priority.
Thank you. Councillor Cloud, do you have any questions? Okay. Yes, look, I have a few. Could I be advised that the Whitneys Creek Bow Street crossing at Merrywar, what's going to happen there? It was, I understand it was put in, but then the rain came and washed things out. Could you give me an update on that, please?
Yes, Chair. So basically, well, the water's still running through Whitneys Creek there. So with the storm damage recently, we just haven't had time to get back to it.
Okay. And also the Klingville Road subdivision, and I brought this up at the, not the intro, the environmental committee this morning, but it sort of deals with both sides as a subdivision, proposed subdivision to 3 blocks, but also the crossing of the river. Now, if the volume of water that goes down that river at bad and flood times or heavy downfalls is considerable. And the question I have asked is, if council gives that agreements to subdivide, that's separate to here, to this committee, and they put in pipes. They first of all said they're going to put in pipes, then they said they'd put in box culverts. Speaking to a person, a concreter and someone that has done that sort of thing, unless they are put in correctly, then they won't have a very long life if you get a big downfall. Who is responsible then for allowing that and putting those pipes in across the river?
Mr. Chair, I'll look to answer that. As pointed out this morning in the Environmental and Community Services meeting, it is dependent on the development application and what the classification of the road is.
Right.
My understanding for this particular road, it's a private road. Therefore, the assets that are constructed on that will remain under private ownership and the responsibility of the property owner. If that was different, if it was a Crown Road or a council road, quite often those assets are transferred into council ownership as part of the process of the development. But for this particular one, my understanding it's a private road and it will remain as a private structure.
Okay. If it's a Crown Road, that'll need to be clarified by.
So if it's a Crown Road, quite typically what happens is the Crown will direct council to take on ownership and responsibility for that road because they won't.
Okay, all right. Now also, there seems to be considerable damage to the Ringwood Road and also the Bow and Kilo causeways. Is there any particular reason for that? Have you had any complaints about that? I understand there's a fair amount of gravel being carted from across the river. I'm not sure whether it's who's doing that or you know anything about it, Sam? Are we carting gravel up to the 5 Mile terminal? I call it a terminal depot there for work on the Golden Highway.
Sorry, Chair, which road are we talking about?
Ringwood Road.
Ringwood Road?
Ringwood Road, the 2 crossing. There's the one across the Bow Creek and the next one's the Kilo Creek.
Yeah. I'll have to investigate.
Would you mind doing that?
Yep.
Yeah, please. Yeah, that'd be good. Yes. Okay. The other one we're still back in the infrastructure, which Matt had discussed. The people down below on the Warrendie Road. My understanding is council maintains that road to 3.8 kilometres, and there's a causeway that was a cement causeway put in below that. I'm not sure the exact location, but it's washed out. Was that a council construct?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
And also, could I just finish?
Yeah.
And also, is it a Crown Road? That's why it went back to the to Matt Pringle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And this question has been asked via email from yourself to me. I did reply to you saying that my team would be investigating that. So once we have that answer, we'll give it to you.
Right.
And we'll report back to this in the minutes.
Yeah, look, thank you for that. Thank you. I guess it's for the new traffic committee, the Bow Street bus stop, where they're letting the buses that are letting children out in an open street, whether it's double parked or what. We need to address that. But anyway, Jeff's not here. He knows about it anyway. Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, just before you go, are those questions just asked, are they coming from the public? Again, if they are,
Yes.
that's the best idea is to get a CRM. And you're
Yes.
talking about the bus one there. That is so important. If that's the issue, and it's anything to do with safety, they need to put a CRM in, or you need to put a CRM in on behalf of them ASAP.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The CRM has already gone in. A letter has been written. This is probably 12 months ago regarding the shop owner that's being impacted by that more or less from the safety of the children as well.
Through you, Mr Chair, can you just tell me which road that is that you're referring to?
Yeah, Bow Street. Bow Street. It's not a bus stop. There's a bus stop, designated bus stop, half the block in Mackenzie Street. The operator of Merriwar Auto garage across the road is impacted quite a bit about that. In fact, he spoke to me about it again yesterday.
So just to be clear, the shop owner's not happy that the bus is stopping in front of his shop
Yes,
because
it's
there's no
been- yes,
bus stop
he
there.
can't, there's vehicles parked there, which is great, but he can't conduct his business. We can't get a park there at various times of the
Mr Chair, this is on the traffic committee agenda.
Yep.
And we haven't had a traffic committee meeting since. So as soon as we get a committee together,
That's right.
I'm sure it'll be number one on the agenda.
It's on the traffic committee agenda. Jeff's aware of it. It's quite a complex issue because it involves the education department and the traffic committee representatives.
Yep.
So that'll be
Okay.
addressed.
Yep, it's on the book. Okay, anything further? Further comment or questions? Okay, well, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your attendance and your participation. Yeah, I think something has to be done. We have to get it clarified. I know you did.